I laid out on the show the reasons I think it would be a mistake for the Manhattan DA to indict Donald Trump over the payoff to Stormy Daniels in 2016 to keep her quiet about their affair. And I talked to a former Manhattan DA who disagreed with me. Tonight, we'll talk to Donald Trump's well-known lawyer for the other side in a moment. I said it was an old case from 2016, that the feds decided not to prosecute the same case in 2018, that it wouldn't be an easy case to win, particularly since their star witness, Michael Cohen, has pled guilty to numerous crimes, including making false statements. I said that getting anything more than a misdemeanor for falsely claiming that the $130,000 payment was for legal fees instead of for hush money would be particularly hard, and that even if convicted, he very well might not even serve time for that crime. And the felony charge would be a novel one, and they'd have to show specifically that the payoff was to influence the campaign, which could be difficult. I also said that it feels political, based on the fact that Manhattan DA's sudden newfound interest in the case only comes in the wake of a new book criticizing DA Bragg for not prosecuting Trump for the more significant charges of bank and tax fraud. I also said I thought the indictment would help Donald Trump politically. But that also doesn't change the reality that federal prosecutors in 2018 did specifically find that on one of the charges Cohen pled guilty to, he, quote, acted in coordination with and at the direction of Donald Trump. It doesn't change the fact that Trump clearly paid Daniels off after the National Enquirer apparently brokered a catch-and-kill deal with Trump's campaign in which the tabloid agreed to look out for potentially damaging stories about Trump before the 2016 election, pay for the rights to them, and then suppress the stories. In October of that year, Daniels' agent and lawyer discussed the possibility of selling exclusive rights to her story about her alleged affair with Trump to the Enquirer. The paper's publisher and editor put Daniels' attorney in touch with Cohen, who then negotiated the $130,000 deal. Part of the issue is the way in which Trump paid Cohen back for the $130,000, how Trump's company recorded that payment. According to documents in Cohen's federal case, Trump's team classified the repayment as relating to legal expenses. And so it sure seems that Trump did falsely claim that the payout was for legal expenses. But let's ask Donald Trump's attorney, Joe Tacopina, who joins us here in studio. Joe, good to see you again.
Thanks, Dan. Great having.
All right, so I know you don't think there should be an indictment. You've said that. You've been very clear about that. But putting aside what you think should happen, based on all of where things are going, the tea leaves, do you expect an indictment?
You know, it's becoming more probable, I think, now. But the one thing I still hold on to is hope that justice will prevail, that the district attorney's office won't stoop to the level of Mark Pomerantz, who was out there looking for a crime to fit the person. I mean, he's made that clear in his ridiculous book, which was a felony, by the way, by writing that book, violating grand jury secrecy laws. I mean, he said repeatedly they wanted Donald Trump on something, and they scoured his records for 3 years, every aspect of his life, and they came up with absolutely nothing.
Well, his book actually lays out, and he would argue he didn't put grand jury material in there, but his book lays out why there should have been a prosecution of Donald Trump. And there was a civil case brought against Donald Trump with very specific details in the bank and tax fraud stuff that, while maybe not criminal, is still pretty ugly for the former president.
Are you talking about the Letitia James case?
Yeah, yeah.
Dan, honestly, I'm very intimately familiar with that case.
Yeah.
That is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. It's an abuse of process. Letitia James, don't forget, when she campaiged as a private citizen. I know you did.
I've criticized her for doing that.
She said, I'm going to get Trump. She was a private citizen. How did she know what the evidence was?
And I agree with you on the motivations, but when you actually read the document, there's a lot of ugly stuff in there for Donald Trump.
Dan, that case, if you want 2 minutes on that, he basically had evaluations of his properties that he submitted to Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank, which profited over $200 million, and they did their own independent evaluation, Cushman Wakefield. They came up with the same or even higher valuations than Donald Trump. Donald Trump also had a one-page discllaimer on the front of every asset.
But the disclaimer
But the disclaimer saying it's not audited financials.
Yeah.
And the one property that transacted, let's talk facts, the one property that transacted of those 25 they claim are fraudulently valuated, transact for $100 million more than Donald Trump evaluated.
Let me read you then from that, because I didn't want to really get into that, Sue, but it's relevant here in the context. Yeah. So this is from the AG lawsuit. This is number 3. Mr. Trump's statements of financial condition for the period of 2011 through 2021. This is 10 years. were fraudulent and misleading in both their composition and presentation. The number of grossly inflated asset values is staggering, affecting most, if not all, of the real estate holdings in any given year. All told, Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization and the other defendants, as part of a repeated pattern and common scheme, derived more than 200 false and misleading valuations of assets included in the 11 statements covering the 10 years.
Says who?
No, that's from the lawsuit.
Right. Says the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Except the bank, who did their own independent valuation, is on the record saying, no, they're not fraudulent. No, they are not fraudulent. Because if they were fraudulent, the bank either committed a crime in violation of Sarbanes-Oxley, or they were incredibly complicit in some conspiracy, neither of which is true. Those valuations were on the mark, if not below value, as one property transacted for $100 million more than the value submitted.
Well, I'd recommend that people who are interested in the details on that read the lawsuit, because the details...
Or the response to the lawsuit.
Both. Fair enough. Read both.
Yeah.
Read both
Yeah.
to get a full picture of what's going on, because I don't want to sort of go down too much down that rabbit hole, even though it is interesting. I want to talk about the Stormy Daniels, because that's what this case is about. Is the former president still denying that he had a sexual encounter with her?
I know you. I watched you last night.
Yeah, of course he had a sexual encounter.
No, why
Come on,
do you say
he's
that?
really denying that?
Yes, he is.
Because all of the evidence points towards...
Where?
All right. You don't pay someone $130,000.
Oh,
you do? Just anyone can
when
come out of the woodwork.
You're about to run for office.
All right, so
okay?
it was for the campaign.
No,
it was for the purpose of the campaign.
In part, but it was also for, as Michael Cohen, the convicted perjurer and liar, and things outside of the world of Trump, he was convicted of lying and committing perjury. But he said in his plea allocution, it was for the benefit of the campaign, so not to hurt the campaign, but also, and here's the important part, also, because it has to be exclusively for that to be campaign law violation. He said exclusively it was also for the protection of embarrassment for the client and his family.
Right.
And his family. But I know many, many wealthy individuals who settle false claims for nuisance value.
Completely false, made up, $130,000. This is like Michael Jackson land, where Michael Jackson would say, oh, I settled all these cases because they were all made up against me.
You don't know my world then. You don't know my world, because I deal with that stuff on a daily basis. But here's the thing. This person had obviously met Donald Trump, as Donald Trump meets a million different people.
Right.
Okay, so there was photos together. So she was going to take it to the next level. The president denies vehemently, and there's no evidence I've seen to the contrary, that he had an affair with her. So let's leave it at that. But here's the thing. He was an extortion victim, whether he did or didn't. You understand that?
Well, you say extortion, but except that she went to the National Enquirer, right? So that's the conversation that was had. A lot of people tell stories and get paid for them by the National Enquirer. The fact that the Enquirer had a deal with the Trump campaign to sort out...
That's not the only publication available, right? So what she did, her lawyer said, give me money, $130 million, or I will go public with the story. If not the Enquirer, I'll go to the Star magazine, the New York Post, anywhere. Anywhere.
No, it wasn't, she wouldn't say that. She said, I'm going to go to the Enquirer. They had a deal, right? Mm-hmm. The Enquirer initially had a deal with her. And instead, the Enquirer passes her on to Michael Cohen.
And what if Michael Cohen said no deal? She just goes away?
No, then she does the story.
Right.
No.
That is extortion. When
it's not extortion. You have to make a threat.
That is a threat.
It's not
I'm going to go public with an allegation.
No,
I'm going public with an allegation unless you give me money.
No, but if it's the reverse, if it's I'm going public with an allegation, I'm just going to talk about this. The National Enquirer was going to pay me for this story. Instead, the Enquirer passes her along to Donald Trump's team. They say, we're not going to pay for this. Mm-hmm. If you want to keep this story from going public, you got to pay for it. That's not any indication that she's threatening anybody.
No, but the facts you're looking at are out of context, because what she said, what her lawyer said, was that if we don't settle with you or the Enquirer doesn't pay us, we'll go to another tabloid. We're either getting paid or we're going public.
But again,
we're either getting paid or going public.
But she's allowed to sell her story. She's allowed to
do whatever she wants.
Right, she's allowed to sell her story.
But she can't say, if you don't give me money, Donald Trump, I'm going public.
Yeah,
that's the extortion. Right,
and there's no evidence that happened.
Oh, there is evidence.
No, there isn't.
Oh, sure there is.
That she threatened. No.
Threatened. The word threatened is, I don't know what connotation you have.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but threatened is, if you don't give me money, I'm going public. That's a threat.
Look, the bottom line is it seems so far
Anyway,
yeah.
Extortion or not extortion, there's no crime here. Let's go back to that, right?
Yeah. On the area where we may agree, where we may agree more, is
there is no crime.
Yeah. Well,
there's no crime.
Well, let's talk about that. You say no crime. What about the $130,000? He agrees, right, that $130,000 was paid.
Sure.
He agrees it wasn't legal fees, correct? Mm-mm. Oh, he still thinks he says
it's not what he agrees or what he thinks.
Your position.
He had a
legal position.
He had a lawyer.
Yeah.
As horrific as that lawyer was, and unqualified as that lawyer was, now we know, and unscrupulous as he was, Michael Cohen was his lawyer who advised him, I'm going to settle this case for you. I'm going to pay it, and you reimburse me as legal fees. That's the lawyer giving advice to the client.
But how is that legal fees? I mean, if he's telling him I'm paying her off, that's not legal fees.
Well, you know, that's a lawyer advising a client. And let me tell you something. Donald Trump had far more important things to do at that time, about to run for office, than worry about how Michael Cohen was structuring a settlement. Okay? But here's the thing. Even if it was misclassified as legal fees, which I dispute vehemently, there's still no crime. I mean, I could write in my checkbook, I bought a car, and I could write, I bought a horse.
Well,
there's nothing, unless it's tied to a tax violation, which it's not, or a campaign law violation, which it is not. It is not, because here's the bright line test. When you're using personal funds, because this was not campaign funds, right? If this were campaign funds, everyone would be screaming for a scalp. When you're using personal funds and you're spending personal funds on either an obligation or expenditure or a commitment, that expense of a person would have to be existing irrespective of the campaign.
But you said,
irrespective of the campaign, and certainly here it did.
But you said personal funds, but before you were saying that it was related to the campaign.
No, I didn't say it was related. I said that's what Michael Cohen in his plea allocution said. It was for two reasons: to influence the campaign, and to protect the client from embarrassment and his family's young son Barron from embarrassment. I didn't say it was related to the campaign. It was not related to the campaign. And he did. He would have done this if he were the TV star that he was before politics ever entered his world.
So anyone who came and made false allegations, he paid him $130,000 or whatever?
Not anyone who came, but someone who had proof that they were together. There was photos of them.
Some picture of the
two
of them together.
You know, then to you and I, $130,000 is a lot. But not maybe to you. Not maybe to you, it's not.
No, it's a lot to Donald Trump.
It's really not. They're called nuisance settlements because there's legal fees involved, and they're nuisance settlements. Yeah. And wealthy people do this all the time. They get allegations that they want to keep private, even if they're not accurate. It's still the public embarrassment that you're avoiding, and that's called a nuisance settlement.
If Donald Trump is indicted, will he turn himself in? Will he fight extradition? What will happen next?
We'll chew this case up. I mean, look, this would be the worst stain on this DA's legacy. Go outside, Dan, in our city, our great city. You just showed a video of cops getting pummeled. This city is a mess. This is what this district attorney is focused on, something that the federal prosecutors, who are a notch above, wouldn't even think about bringing.
But they thought about it. They thought very closely about it.
And they
decided not to bring it.
And they didn't bring it. Okay, they didn't think about bringing it. They may have thought about it, but they didn't think about bringing it. And even that Pomerantz, who violated all their fiduciary obligations in that office and the trust of Bragg, who's made a complaint against him, even he said in his book, this is a zombie case. A zombie case, meaning this is a case that no one thought we should bring. No one thought we should bring. And this is the one that they're going to bring. Good luck.
Well, regardless of what happens here, he's got himself a good lawyer. Joe Tacopina.
Thank you, brother.
Good to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks.